to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. You've arrived at a quiet edge of evening where the day can finally loosen its grip. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Allow your hands to rest wherever they've chosen, heavy and warm, as if they've been resting there for ages. Inhale slowly, as though you're sipping the air rather than pulling it in. Exhale, as if you're releasing something you've carried for far too long. Tonight you'll drift into a gentle tale about a cabin tucked on Blueberry Hill, where the air smells sweet, the moonlight is kind, and the world feels safely hushed. Imagine the space around you growing calmer with every breath. The room you're in becomes softer at the edges, like a painting that's just beginning to blur. The sounds around you settle into the background. Even your thoughts can slow like leaves floating on still water, each thought passing by without needing to be caught. In your mind, a path appears, quiet earth beneath your feet, a faint sprinkle of pine needles, and the first cool touch of night. The sky is deepening, turning velvety and wide. Far away, an owl offers a low, thoughtful call, and then returns to silence. You don't have to do anything at all. You only have to listen and let the story carry you. And as your breathing becomes steady and easy, the perspective gently shifts so you can rest even more deeply, simply watching as if from a peaceful distance as the night begins to unfold. In a country of soft hills and sleepy forests, there was a rise of land known as Blueberry Hill. It earned its name honestly from the shrubs that covered its slopes like a quilt stitched from tiny green leaves and dusky fruit. In the warmer seasons, the berries ripened into deep shades of blue and ink, and the air there always seemed to taste faintly sweet, as though the hill itself remembered sunlight, even in the quieter part of the year, when the leaves had turned and fallen and the berries had long been gathered by birds and careful hands. The hill kept its gentle character. The shrubs still held their shape, clustered and patient, and the wind that moved through them carried a soft, resinous scent from the pines below. There was a particular hush on Blueberry Hill, a hush that felt less like emptiness and more like a kind of listening. Near the crest of that hill, where the trees stepped back to make room for a small clearing, stood a cabin. It was not a grand cabin, nor a new one. Its wood had weathered into a color like warm tea, and the boards fit together with a simple sturdiness, as if the cabin had been built by hands that understood both storms and comfort. A stone chimney rose along its side, and a single window caught whatever light the sky offered, reflecting it in a way that always looked gentle. Moonlight softened, sunset mellowed, morning made kind. Some people might have passed nearby and never noticed it. The path that led to the cabin was more suggestion than road, a narrow ribbon of trodden earth that wound through ferns and between trees, disappearing whenever fallen needles covered it. And yet the cabin was never lost to those who needed it. It had a way of being found at the right moment, as though Blueberry Hill held a quiet invitation. On a certain evening when the sky was brushed with pale violet and the air had the coolness of early night, a traveler came to the lower edge of the hill. Her name was Elowen, and she moved with the unhurried pace of someone who had walked far enough to stop counting distance. She carried a small pack, worn at the straps, and a cloak that had gathered the scent of rain and road and crushed herbs. Her boots were marked with dust, and her hair held a few wind-tangled strands that refused to be smoothed. Elowen was not lost exactly. She knew the direction she had been heading, and she knew the place she had hoped to reach by morning. But there are moments in a journey when the body speaks more clearly than the mind, and on that evening her body spoke of rest. Her shoulders were tired in a way that asked for warmth. Her hands wanted to wrap around something steaming. Her eyes wanted to close without needing to watch the path. At the base of Blueberry Hill she paused and looked up. The shrubs were darker now, a soft mass against the fading light. The hill rose gently, not steep, but with a steady climb that suggested it might lead to open sky. Above it, a few early stars had appeared, faint as pinpricks. The trees at the edge of the hill stood like quiet guardians, their branches barely moving. Elowen took a breath. The air was cool, and it carried that subtle sweetness like a memory of summer. She began to walk. The path was kind beneath her boots, springy with old needles and leaves. As she climbed, the sounds of the wider world slipped away. The distant murmur of a river, the occasional creak of a far-off branch. Everything softened. The night seemed to gather around her, not as darkness, but as a blanket. She passed clusters of blueberry shrubs, their branches thin and delicate, their leaves small and hardy. Some still held a few dried berries, shriveled into tiny dark beads that glinted faintly. Here and there, the shrubs grew close together, forming little corridors that guided her forward. The air between them felt slightly warmer, as though the hill kept its own breath. Elowen's steps grew slower, not from strain, but from a strange easing. Her mind, which had been busy with plans and routes and the quiet calculations of travel, began to drift. She noticed small things instead. The way the wind moved over the shrubs like fingers smoothing hair. The way the sky deepened from violet to indigo. The way the first true star appeared and held steady. Up ahead, among the shrubs in the clearing, a softer darkness took shape. A silhouette that did not belong to trees. A cabin? It sat as though it had always been there, nestled into the hill without disturbing it. A faint glow pulsed behind the window, warm and golden, the kind of light that promises a hearth. The chimney sent up a thin thread of smoke, not heavy, not urgent, but steady and calm, spiraling into the night air. Elowen stopped for a moment, simply looking. There was no fear in her, only relief so immediate it felt like a sigh rising from somewhere deep inside. Her feet carried her forward, without debate. The cabin's door was made of thick wood, its surface marked by years and weather. A small wreath hung upon it, twigs woven with dried blueberry leaves and tiny pale blossoms that looked too fresh to be real in this season. The blossoms were faintly luminous, as if they held a sliver of moonlight in their petals. Elowen raised a hand to knock, then paused. The quiet around the cabin was so complete that a knock felt almost too sharp, too much like breaking the spell of evening. Before she could decide, the door opened on its own, not abruptly, but slowly, with the unhurried ease of something expected. In the doorway stood an older woman with silver hair braided over one shoulder. Her face was lined in a way that made her look perpetually kind, as if she had smiled through many seasons. She wore a simple dress beneath a shawl, the color of moss, and her eyes reflected the firelight from inside, warm and steady. "Come in," the woman said, her voice as soft as a well-worn blanket. "The hill has brought you." Elowen blinked, surprised by the certainty in that statement, and yet it felt true. She stepped across the threshold. Warmth wrapped around her at once. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and dried herbs, of beeswax and something sweet simmering gently. The light inside was low and golden, coming from a hearth where a small fire crackled with lazy, contented flames. Candles sat on shelves and the windowsill, their flames steady as if the cabin itself protected them from drafts. The room was simple, but every object seemed placed with care. A table made of polished wood held a bowl filled with pine cones and a few smooth stones. Hooks along a wall held bundles of dried lavender, rosemary, and something Elowen couldn't name but that smelled faintly like rain on warm earth. A rocking chair rested near the fire, its curved arms worn by years of use. A quilt lay folded over the back of a sofa, patterned with blueberries stitched in soft thread. Elowen slipped her pack from her shoulders, suddenly aware of how heavy it had been. The older woman took it with gentle hands and set it on a bench, then gestured to a place near the hearth. "Sit," she said. "Let the road fall away." Elowen sat, and the chair seemed to welcome her, its cushion sinking just enough to hold her comfortably. She felt her body begin to unwind, as if every muscle had been waiting for permission. The woman moved about the cabin with unhurried grace. She set a kettle to warm near the fire, and as it began to hum, she took down a small jar from a shelf. When she opened it, a scent drifted out, dried blueberries perhaps, and something floral, something like chamomile with a deeper note beneath. Elowen watched without needing to speak. The cabin felt like a place where conversation could happen, but silence was equally welcomed. It was the kind of silence that made room for breath. The woman poured hot water into a mug and added a pinch of the dried mixture. The liquid darkened slowly, turning the color of twilight. She carried it to Elowen and placed it in her hands. The mug was warm, solid, comforting. Elowen wrapped her fingers around it and inhaled. The scent rose gently, sweet and soothing. "It's from the hill," the woman said, settling into the rocking chair near the fire. blueberry leaf and blossom with a little honey, the kind of drink that tells the body it can rest. Alawan took a sip. The warmth slid down her throat like a lullaby. The flavor was soft, not overly sweet, with a note of earth beneath, as though it carried the memory of roots. For a while, the only sounds were the quiet crackle of the fire and the faint creak of the rocking chair. Outside, the wind brushed the cabin lightly like a hand, smoothing a curtain. Somewhere in the distance, the owl called again, and this time it sounded like a gentle punctuation, a reminder that night was doing its work. Alawan's eyelids grew heavy, but she remained awake, suspended in that pleasant space between alertness and drifting. The older woman rocked slowly, her gaze resting on the fire, the flames reflected in her eyes like tiny dancing lanterns. "Alawan," she said at last, as if the name had always been known. "You've come at a good time." Alawan did not ask how the woman knew her name. In the cabin's glow, it felt natural. Names felt less like secrets and more like truths that the air itself could hold. "What is this place?" Alawan asked, her voice quiet. The woman's smile was small, calm. "It's a cabin on Blueberry Hill," she said, as though that explained everything. "Some call it a shelter, some call it a pause, some call it a doorway." Alawan's brow furrowed faintly, not in worry, but in gentle curiosity. The woman continued, her voice weaving softly. "The hill is old. It has watched travelers and seasons and the slow turning of stars. It learned long ago that those who walk far sometimes need a place that asks nothing of them, so it holds this cabin, and it offers it when the time is right." Alawan looked around again, seeing the cabin not just as a building, but as a living kindness. The quilt, the herbs, the candlelight. Everything felt like an extension of the hill's gentle intention. "And you?" Alawan asked. The woman rocked, her shawl shifting like a leaf moving in a breeze. "I'm the keeper for as long as I'm needed," she said. "I tend the fire. I brew the tea. I listen to the wind. When someone comes, I welcome them. When they leave, I let the door close softly behind them." Alawan took another sip of tea. Her thoughts were slowing, stretching out like a cat in warm sunlight. The keeper stood again, moving toward a shelf where a small book lay. It was bound in worn leather, its edges soft with use. She opened it carefully, as if opening a window. "This hill has stories," she murmured. "Not loud stories, quiet ones, the kind that settle into bones and ease the breath." She did not begin to read aloud in a formal way. Instead, she spoke as though she was remembering something, letting the words float into the room like smoke from the hearth. "There was a time," she said, "when Blueberry Hill was a place of fog and wildness. The shrubs grew without pattern, and the trees below were thick and tangled. Travelers avoided it, saying the hill was strange, that the air around it made their dreams too vivid." Alawan listened, her gaze fixed on the fire. The flames danced and shifted, making the shadows on the walls move like slow, gentle waves. "One evening," the keeper continued, "a young carpenter came through the forest. He'd been walking for a long while, carrying tools that felt heavier with each step. He was not afraid of strange places, but he was tired. He saw the hill and felt that tiredness turn into something deeper, something that asked for stillness. Alowan imagined the carpenter, his hands calloused, his shoulders burdened. The image was easy, as if the cabin's warmth made imagination soft and pliable. The carpenter climbed the hill and found a clearing, the keeper said. No cabin yet, only shrubs and sky. He sat among the blueberry branches and let the fog curl around him. He thought he might sleep there, but as his eyes closed, he heard something. Soft and steady, like a heartbeat. The fire crackled gently. Elawan's breathing matched it, slow and even. The heartbeat was the hill, the keeper said. Not a sound of danger, but a sound of presence. The carpenter listened, and in that listening he understood something simple. The hill wanted to offer comfort, but it needed hands to shape that comfort into form. Elawan held the mug against her palms, feeling its warmth seep into her. So he stayed, the keeper said. He gathered fallen wood, stones from the riverbed below, branches that had come down in old storms. He worked without hurry. The hill did not rush him. The fog did not trouble him. Birds watched from the trees, and deer stepped close without fear. The keeper's voice was like the rocking chair, steady, rhythmic, lulling. As he built, something else happened, she said. The fog began to change. It became softer, less confusing. It settled around the clearing like a shawl, and the carpenter realized it was not there to hide the hill, but to hush it, to make it quiet enough for resting. Elawan's eyelids lowered, then lifted again, the way a person does when they want to keep listening even as sleep beckons. The cabin took shape, the keeper continued. Walls fitted snugly. A roof slanted kindly against rain. A hearth was made of stone, and when the carpenter lit the first fire, the light spilled into the fog, turning it golden. Elawan imagined it vividly. A new cabin, firelight in mist, a sense of shelter appearing as if called forth. When the cabin was finished, the keeper said, the carpenter sat inside and listened again. The hill's heartbeat was still there, calm and steady, and he understood that the cabin was not meant for him alone. It was meant for anyone who climbed the hill with tired feet and a heavy heart. Elawan's throat tightened slightly, not with sadness, but with the kind of emotion that comes from recognizing kindness in the world. He left the next morning, the keeper said, and the cabin remained. It waited. It welcomed. It became part of the hill. The keeper closed the book gently, as though tucking the story back into place. Elawan sat quietly, letting the tale settle inside her. The cabin around her felt even more alive now, as if the walls held echoes of many gentle evenings. Outside, the wind shifted. It brushed the shrubs, and the sound was like distant rain, soft and steady. The keeper rose and moved toward the window. She pulled back a curtain slightly, and moonlight spilled in, cool silver that mingled with the fire's warm gold. In that blend of light, the room felt dreamy, half in this world and half somewhere softer. "The moon is bright," the keeper said. "Blueberry Hill likes moonlit nights. The shrubs shimmer, and sometimes the hill's little mysteries stir." Elowen's curiosity floated up again, gentle as a bubble. "Mysteries?" she asked. The keeper smiled, as though she'd been waiting for that question. "Nothing frightening," she said, "only the kind of mystery that makes the world feel wider. Come if you'd like. A small walk, just enough to stretch the legs before rest." Alowen hesitated only a moment. The tea had warmed her, and the cabin had soothed her, but there was something about stepping outside into the moonlight that felt inviting rather than cold. She stood, her joints protesting only faintly, and followed the keeper to the door. The night air met them like cool water, refreshing but not harsh. The sky overhead was deep and clear, scattered with stars. The moon hung above the hill, bright enough to cast gentle shadows. The blueberry shrubs on the slope caught the moonlight on their leaves, making them glimmer as though dusted with frost, though the air did not bite with winter. The keeper stepped lightly, as if she knew every root and stone. Alowen followed, her boots brushing softly through the shrubs. The hill's crest was only a short walk from the cabin, and as they reached it, the land opened into a wide view. Below, the forest spread like a dark, rippling sea. Far beyond, faint lights marked a distant village, tiny and soft, like fireflies caught in glass. The keeper gestured toward the blueberry shrubs around them. "Look closely," she said. Alowen leaned slightly, her gaze focusing on the leaves and branches. At first, she saw only the natural shimmer of moonlight. Then she noticed something else. Small points of light nestled among the shrubs. Not berries, not flowers, but tiny glows, like pale blue embers. They blinked slowly, appearing and fading as if breathing. Elowen's breath caught in a quiet way. "What are they?" The keeper's voice was barely above the wind. "Some say they're the hill's dreams," she whispered. "Little lights that appear when the night is calm enough. They don't belong to anyone. They simply are." Alowen watched as the lights pulsed gently. They were not bright, not demanding attention. They were soothing, like the glow of distant lanterns reflected on water. A breeze moved through, and the lights drifted slightly, as if the shrubs carried them like cradles. Alowen felt her mind quiet further, her thoughts smoothing out until they were less like words and more like sensations. Cool air, soft light, steady presence. The keeper stepped closer to a shrub and reached into its branches. Her fingers moved carefully, respectfully. When she withdrew her hand, she held a small object, a smooth stone, round and pale, with a faint blue tint. She placed it in Eloan's palm. It was cool, and it seemed to hum with a subtle warmth. Beneath that coolness, like a stone that had been sitting in moonlight for a long time. A hill stone, the keeper murmured, not magic in the way people imagine with sparks and spells. It's simpler. It carries the feeling of this place. When you hold it, your body remembers how to rest. Alawan curled her fingers around it. The stone's smoothness was comforting. She didn't know if she believed in such things, but she also didn't feel the need to argue with the gentle possibility. In this moment, belief felt less important than ease. They stood together, watching the blueberry lights blink in patient rhythm. Somewhere below, a fox barked once, then fell silent. The forest seemed to settle deeper into itself. After a while, the keeper turned back toward the cabin. Eloan followed, her steps slower now, as though she was already drifting through a dream. Inside, the warmth embraced them again. The fire had lowered into coals that glowed softly, still giving off heat, but no longer crackling loudly. The cabin felt even quieter, as if it too was winding down. The keeper moved about in gentle preparation, like a person tidying a nest. She added a small log to the fire, just enough to keep it alive through the night. She dimmed a candle near the window and left another burning softly on a shelf. "Eloan," she said, her voice low. "There's a loft above, a bed with fresh quilts. The hill's air comes through the window there, sweet and clean. You'll sleep well." Eloan nodded, suddenly too tired to speak much. She held the hillstone in her hand and the last warmth of tea in her belly. The keeper led her to a narrow staircase that rose along the cabin wall. The steps creaked softly, not startling, but comforting, as if the cabin was whispering its age. Upstairs, the loft was small and snug. A bed sat beneath a slanted ceiling, covered in quilts layered thickly. The quilts were patterned with blueberries and leaves, stitched in shades that looked like twilight and dawn. A small window faced the hill's slope, and through it the moonlight spilled in, pale and serene. Eloan set her pack down and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was soft, but supportive, like the ground after a day of walking when you finally lie down on a patch of moss. The keeper lingered near the doorway, her presence calm. "Before sleep," she murmured, "the hill likes a small listening. Not thinking, only listening." Eloan's gaze drifted toward the window. She could hear the wind moving through the shrubs, making a gentle rustling sound. It reminded her of distant waves. Beneath that, there was something else, faint, steady, like a pulse, the hill's heartbeat. It was subtle, not a literal sound, but a feeling that seemed to vibrate through the air, through the wood of the cabin, through Eloan's own bones. It was the kind of sensation that told the body it was safe. Eloan lay back, pulling the quilts up around her. They were warm, heavy, in the best way, pressing gently down, as if reassuring her that she could let go. The keeper spoke again, quieter now. "The cabin will hold you. The hill will watch. The night will do what it does." Eloan's eyelids lowered, Her fingers loosened around the hillstone and she placed it on the pillow beside her, close enough to touch if she wanted, but not something she needed to hold. The keeper's footsteps retreated down the stairs, soft and slow, and soon even that sound faded. The cabin settled into its nighttime stillness. Aloan listened. She listened to the faint crackle of the fire below, now more a whisper than a sound. She listened to the wind and the shrubs and the distant call of night creatures. She listened to the quiet pulse of Blueberry Hill. And slowly, as listening became the only thing she did, her mind began to drift. In that drifting, images floated up, not sharp like waking thoughts, but soft and dreamlike. She imagined the carpenter long ago building the cabin with patient hands. She imagined other travelers arriving, each carrying their own tiredness, each finding warmth here. She imagined the hillstones scattered among the shrubs like hidden little moons. Her breathing slowed further. Her body sank deeper into the bed, as if it was becoming part of the quilt and mattress, part of the cabin itself. Outside the window, the blueberry lights continued their gentle blinking. They were like slow, steady stars nestled close to the earth, reminding the hill that even in darkness there could be glow. Eloan's dreams began to take shape with the same gentle rhythm. In her dream, she walked through the blueberry shrubs again, but the hill was brighter, washed in silver light. The shrubs were taller, their branches arching overhead like a tunnel. The air smelled sweet and fresh, like berries warmed by sun, though the moon still shone above. As she walked, the tiny lights drifted around her, not touching her, only keeping her company. They moved like fireflies, but slower, calmer, as if they had all the time in the world. Ahead she saw the cabin, but it looked different in the dream. It was the same shape, the same chimney, the same warm window glow, but it seemed to breathe. Its walls expanded and settled like a sleeping creature. The smoke from the chimney curled into shapes that resembled soft ribbons dissolving into the sky. Aloan approached and the door opened as it had before. Inside, the keeper sat by the fire, rocking gently, her silver braid shining in the dream light. She looked up and smiled as if Aloan had never left. "Rest is a road too," the keeper said, though her lips barely moved. The words seemed to come from the fire, from the quilts, from the very air. Aloan felt herself relax even more, as if her dream body was also unwinding. The keeper lifted her hand and gestured toward a shelf. On it sat a jar of blueberries, impossibly fresh, their skins glossy and dark. They glowed faintly, like the lights among the shrubs. Aloan reached for one and tasted it. The flavor burst gently, sweet and cool, like moonlight made edible. It wasn't a sharp sweetness, but a soothing one, spreading warmth through her chest. As she ate, the cabin around her seemed to soften further. The corners blurred. The firelight became a haze of gold. The rocking chairs creaked turned into a steady rhythm, like a lullaby. The dream shifted again, smoothly like water flowing around stones. Now Alawan found herself lying on the hill itself, among the blueberry shrubs. The branches formed a protective canopy above her, and the lights blinked like tiny stars. The earth beneath her was warm, as if the hill had stored the day's sunlight and was releasing it slowly for her comfort. Above, the sky was wide and deep, scattered with stars that seemed closer than they ever did in waking life. They pulsed softly, matching the hill's heartbeat. Elowen felt herself becoming lighter, as if she was floating just above the ground. The shrubs rustled gently, and their sound was like whispered promises. In this dream, there was no need to travel, no need to plan, no need to think ahead. There was only the sensation of being held by the hill, by the night, by the steady rhythm of rest. The hillstone appeared in her hand, smooth and cool. When she held it, the dream became even quieter. The stars dimmed slightly, not disappearing, but becoming softer, like lights behind a curtain. The world narrowed to a comfortable cocoon. Breath, warmth, stillness. Alowan's dream self sighed, and that sigh seemed to ripple through the shrubs, through the lights, through the sky. Everything responded by settling. The cabin on Blueberry Hill was not just a place, it was a feeling. It was the gentle recognition that tiredness could be met with kindness. And as the dream continued, it grew simpler and simpler, like a song that repeats the same soothing notes until the listener no longer needs to follow the melody, only to rest within it. Down in the cabin, the fire burned low and steady. The keeper sat in her chair, rocking slowly, listening to the night. The moon moved quietly across the sky, casting its pale light over the shrubs, over the clearing, over the cabin's roof. The blueberry lights blinked softly as if keeping watch. Alawan slept upstairs beneath the quilts, her breathing even and deep. Her face had softened, her brow smooth, her mouth relaxed. The hillstone rested near her pillow, catching a faint glimmer of moonlight. Outside, the wind moved through the shrubs and trees, never harsh, never urgent. It was the kind of wind that simply reminded the world it was alive. The cabin creaked now and then, not from strain, but from age, from the gentle shifting of wood. The sound was comforting, like the quiet voice of a home settling deeper into sleep. Time passed in the slow way it does at night, when minutes stretch out and soften, when the world feels less bound to clocks and more bound to breath. Elowen's dreams became quieter too. The vivid images faded into gentle sensations. Warmth on skin, the scent of blueberries and smoke, the feeling of being safe. Even those sensations began to blur, turning into something even simpler, peace without shape. The keeper's rocking slowed. Her eyes drifted closed. The cabin held both of them, held the night like a gentle secret. And Blueberry Hill, patient and kind, continued its steady heartbeat beneath it all. The wind down of night came gently, like a blanket being pulled up a little higher. The fire dimmed further, its glow turning softer, more like embers than flames. The cabin's light became quieter, less golden, more like a warm memory. The moonlight through the loft window spread pale and calm across the quilts. Aloan slept on, heavy and comfortable, as if the bed had become part of her body and she had become part of the bed. Outside, the blueberry shrubs rustled less. The lights among them blinked more slowly, their glow faint and soothing, as if they too were becoming drowsy. The forest below settled into deep stillness. Even the owl was quiet now. The night had reached its calmest point, the moment when everything feels suspended in soft, dark peace. In the loft, Aloan's breathing was the only rhythm that mattered, in and out, slow and steady. Her shoulders sank deeper, her hands rested loosely, fingers relaxed. Her face was peaceful, as if even her thoughts had fallen asleep. The cabin on Blueberry Hill held its quiet promise. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, only rest. And as the story quiets, as the words soften and slow, it becomes easier to drift with them, to let your own mind settle the way Aloan's did, into a gentle stillness where nothing is required. The hill's heartbeat continues, faint and steady. The fire's warmth lingers, soft and safe. The quilts are heavy and comforting. The moonlight is kind. Everything can slow. Everything can soften. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.